Hi there. Kit Harington just gave a new pair of interviews while he was promoting a new movie, in which he very prominently confirmed that his proposed Jon Snow sequel spin-off to Game of Thrones is dead. It's not happening, there's no movement on it, it's been shelved indefinitely. Now, this isn't exactly news to us because he had made public remarks about this at London Comic-Con back last autumn, but they weren't recorded, as audio visual or anything. It wasn't a podcast. It was just fans who were there at his panel tweeted out, he mentioned it has been shelved. We took these reports seriously, the online big channels that are trying to follow these things, so I made videos already reacting to that back last November or something. So did Red Team Review and Preston Jacobs, that we already have all reported on. He said this project was dead. But it's weird how the mainstream news doesn't really pick up on that kind of thing sometimes. I get, well, it wasn't a video interview, it wasn't even a podcast interview. It was just people who were there reported it through tweets, and they don't trust those as much. I would, because they were there at his convention panel. Whatever. I am relieved that these new interviews, it was a podcast with Screen Rant and then another one with Entertainment Weekly. These were prominent enough in major outlets that, Entertainment Weekly on its own is a prominent outlet. Then it starts circulating through all of them. So the first one didn't go viral back last fall, a couple of months ago. This one actually did, that you saw on front page news from news aggregators who were reporting on, wow, it's really not happening now. Which I hope means we'll finally stop having clickbaiters pestering us with this stuff. That all the clickbait things were constantly promoting this, even though there was no news for it after it was first leaked around June of 2022. This is before House of the Dragon premiered. We got nothing. There was no news, just empty speculation. And because they have nothing else to talk about, they keep barraging us with this rather than focusing on the actively filming and airing prequel series that are actually going to happen. Because anything they make with Jon Snow would be fanfic. It's not something George R. R. Martin came up with, though he supported Kit at the time. So the clickbaiters would constantly make up, oh, there's some leak about this, and then there were the fans who, in good faith, would, and I understand that, would come into the comment sections and ask us, hey, is there any news about the Jon Snow thing? Simply because a big part of my channel is the news infrastructure has declined, has failed us. It's turned into infotainment and clickbait, that you don't even have people regularly updating that there isn't a Jon Snow thing coming out, and he mentioned it 3 months ago at a convention. So a lot of people aren't very well informed, and in good faith are asking, hey, what's going on with that? So here's hoping that it's actually gone viral now. I've seen it in the past couple of days, came out a few days ago, spreading around to other news sites. If something as big as Entertainment Weekly and Screen Rant posted, like Variety posting it, Hollywood Reporter, I'm hoping this reaches a larger number of people. And I also hope that when you actually see the view counts on these things, they didn't even get that many views. Which, paradoxically, I hope means the clickbaiters will realize they're getting diminishing returns, that this isn't really exciting people as much as it did 2 years ago. Because there is nothing to go on, and you bled it dry. The endless speculation. So channels like me, Preston Jacobs, Red Team Review, we already did reactions to the news this wasn't happening. And a lot of it, I'm going to really, please watch it. I'm going to link it at the end. I know I always say, oh, check out another video. Actually check this out. This was when we first heard it was gone. And it's just me, 2 minutes of saying, oh, Kit said it's been shelved. And the rest is a long video of just podcast of me yelling about the people who were digging into the celebrity culture of this, and you don't want Jon Snow, you want Kit Harington in a Jon Snow costume, and oh, we'll just make something up, or let's make an Arya spin-off, where there's no source material, and you don't even like giving her character development. That they reduced Arya to a caricature of Little Miss Badass, to the point that when she has sex in season 8, and she's 18, Gendry is a longtime love interest, people were appalled, and it's they don't want to verbalize because we were just used to her as being perpetually 13 or younger.
Well, I yell about that a lot more in my original video. But a key point of that video was we still really support Kit Harington and support that he'd want to do this, even in the future, because he really got screwed over by the showrunners going off book. This isn't Jon Snow's storyline. And if he wanted to end the character on his own terms, we're all for it. I mean, we know it's fanfic, but it's his fanfic, and we'd support that over this. It's a screw you to Benioff and Weiss that no, season 8 wasn't the perfect take on this character. You didn't even work very hard. You half-assed this, then demanded praise for it. And I compared it to like X-Men movies that, like, after a string of bad ones like X-Men Origins Wolverine and X-Men 3, then having like a distant finale character piece on the actor's own terms, which turned into Logan, which was a really good movie. So I thought that's what he'd want to do, something in that vein. Of course, a lot of people kept thinking up, oh, we'll put in random things that were left over from the books to make a season 9 and have a continent-scale war. I got the feeling he wanted a character piece or something. We'll never know for sure, but it's that mentality going on every bad season of Game of Thrones, the denial. Season 5 is bad. Do we turn on Benioff and Weiss? No. Next year we'll redeem it. Next year will be better. Shut up with all those complaints. And I kept thinking, oh, when the final season is bad, people will run out of excuses. No, they just clung to the idea of there'll be a season 9 that can fix everything. You can't. Too much has been ruined. Too much was ruined already by season 5, that they can't just, oh, next season will make up for killing off the Martells and the Sansa. You can't. It already happened. This can't be magically undone. But so there are some people who wanted this for the wrong reasons, but when I say we were all supportive of this, I mean the online analysis community like Red Team Review, Preston Jacobs, even Quinn's ideas, I've seen expressing, like, we support Kit Harington doing this on his own terms. So that was the big point of that. But all of that quick recapping aside, because we already reacted to all this back in autumn, Kit Harington did say 2 new things in these interviews. Apart from remarking on that, wow, now that he said it very prominently on a podcast, in a print interview with Entertainment Weekly, in a direct interview very clearly, hopefully this is circulating enough. In each interview, I'm going to combine both of them here, he said something pretty crucial. One in each. He doesn't give specific details on anything, and that's kind of the point. Well, let me start with the Entertainment Weekly one. I'm just going to read off his whole thing and then remark on it. Quote, "It's not happening, and not happening anytime soon anyway. We bounced some ideas around, and nothing really lit us up. It just didn't. I think we don't want to do something that's not worth it. So for the time being, we're just shelving it." This general idea, he doesn't even say anything specific. There's nothing specific to shelve. They're just bouncing ideas. Well, continuing, quote, "I would never have said yes to the idea of developing something with Jon Snow if I didn't think there was something interesting there, and there could have been. But HBO cares about the character a lot, and I care about the character a lot, and we don't want to put out something that is going to sully the character." Bit late for that, but I understand better attitude towards it than the other guys. Well, that's the worst thing that we could possibly do. Put out something that sullies the character. So unless we find something in the future that really lands, there's no point in rushing it. There's no point in keeping developing for development's sake and doing something I don't want to do. This is a massive admission, because this whole time it was sort of built up to us, through no fault of Harington's, that he had a very clear idea for this show. He just admitted he didn't have a specific idea. He said that phrase, "we bounced some ideas around," that there could have been some interesting ideas. He doesn't say he had one. And I'm not angry at him for this, it's just I had a brainstorming session with some people. If I kind of want to revisit the character, what could I do? he didn't have a specific idea yet. He was hoping for one, couldn't really come up with one on his own, so he decided it's better not to try anything if I'm not really confident in it. I respect that. What really got us on this, what turned all of our heads when there was that one leak about this in June 2022, is that he said he had writers attached. Sort of implied to us that there were specific ideas already outlined, that he had an outline for this. He never actually said he had an outline. And what it appears is he assembled a team of writers, like 3 or 4 people, maybe as few as that, maybe more, for brainstorming sessions. And they brainstormed, couldn't really agree on anything, and the idea didn't go anywhere, because there wasn't an idea. It was just theorizing of, could we do something more with this character? So this is a nuclear bomb going off for me, that it's not that he had a wacky idea, or he did not have a formal idea. That he was guessing what to do with this character as much as any of the other clickbaiters with their red arrows and here's a giant leak images on YouTube. That he didn't know what to do with it. And I respect that he said this very maturely and professionally while I came in and did that this was never a coherent, clear idea. It's as much as you would speculate in an interview where they go, hey, would you ever come back as Arya? Yeah, maybe. Here's some ideas off the top of my head. Pretty much the same thing with Harington. He said, would I ever come back? Yeah, I think I might want to come back. Here's some ideas I could do. Let me ask some other writers who are good idea people, and while I'm at it, let's bounce some ideas off. Maybe, but then after the meeting, yeah, now we really couldn't think of anything. It wasn't a formal pitch like that. I question whether this was ever a pitch document. Because they referred to it as a pitch, but it wasn't. When I say a pitch, focus on this in the comments section, if nothing else. A pitch document is this, it's this formal submission that you do on this is what this TV show will be like. It is a formal document that you then get handed back, and if they like it, they commission a pilot. Was this ever a formal pitch, written out in text form where he said, and these are my ideas for what a Jon Snow show could be? Or did he just verbalize, I want to get a team of writers together to brainstorm? In which case, why were people referring to this as a pitch, when pitch with a capital P has a specific technical meaning? And that's something I want interviewers to ask him or George R. R. Martin, if ever they get the opportunity. Just, was that a formally submitted pitch or more of an idea you were throwing around? I mean, similarly, remember when they briefly mentioned we kind of want to do a Flea Bottom prequel, that we were pitching. But then after they dropped it, George R. R. Martin said in his blog, it was never a formal pitch. It was an idea we were tossing around the office, his exact words. So was the Jon Snow thing no more than the Flea Bottom thing if it wasn't a formal pitch? Now granted, when the lead actor is going, I kind of want to brainstorm some ideas with a team of writers, that is more than just, oh, we were yakking about the offices. We wanted to have a roundtable discussion with the actor. It's not a formal pitch. So how the heck did this get played up so much when it was, quote, some ideas we were bouncing around? There could have been interesting ideas, but we didn't come up with any. That comes up in the other half of this in Harington's podcast interview with Screen Rant. I read that off. Quote, I hadn't really ever spoken about it because it was in development. I didn't want it leaked out that it was being developed, and I didn't want the thing to happen where people kind of start theorizing, getting either excited about it or hating the idea of it when it may never happen. Because in development, you look at every angle and you see whether it's worth it. You brainstorm. And currently, it's not. Currently, it's off the table. Any idea of a Jon Snow spinoff is off the table. Because we all couldn't find the right story to tell that we were all excited about enough. So we decided to lay down the tools with it for the time being. There may be a time in the future where we return to it, but at the moment, no. It's firmly on the shelf. So as much as any other character, like Arya, Brienne, whatever, Harrington is open to, like, on a scale of like 10 years from now, maybe he could suggest, hey, can I do like this Logan-style distant future Jon Snow epilogue character piece, and I would still support it even then. But this isn't just, oh, it's been backburnered. This is not backburnered. This is, he said, firmly on the shelf. Maybe years from now I'm open to, but we're not discussing it. I'm not pushing for it. If this doesn't get the clickbaiters to stop talking about it, I don't know what will. He was very clear about this. And in the past week, thankfully, we've seen the news as it circulated really getting that it wasn't coming back. It isn't just backburnered. But look at what he said. Again, repeating, we didn't really have an idea that excited us. That this whole time, up to the point I'm making this video, up to this week, April 2024, for 2 years almost, we thought he had this general idea that he was brainstorming the specifics about with writers. He purely thought, I kind of want to revisit the character. Can I get some writers together to brainstorm? By his own admission. And this was such a nascent idea. This is the key point of the Screen Rant thing. He did not want to talk about it publicly because there was nothing to hype. I'm on Harrington's side here, that he didn't want to give us the false promise of a Jon Snow spin-off because he wasn't even sure if he had a good idea for one. I am pausing for emphasis. This was not what he wanted. Like when they're kind of vaguely discussing, okay, here's some ideas, we could just a one-on-one, even if it was a conversation between him and George R. R. Martin. There's a conversation, and then there's a formal pitch document. And he is verbalizing, I didn't want to, if it wasn't a formal pitch document, I didn't want to get wild speculation fueled on the internet about it. Which is exactly what happened. And why did this happen? Look at the contrast of this with how this leak came out. It was leaked out by James Hibbard, who was David Benioff's mouthpiece for years. He used to work at Entertainment Weekly, now he's at THR. And I understand that, okay, he keeps passing himself off as, I'm the big Game of Thrones guy. He gave this huge 2-part interview right before House of the Dragon, going over everything about the prequel development process and all the different spin-offs, potential spin-offs, which we didn't know about on a scale like 5 years. It was this really long article. But around the same time, he also put out, and wow, there's this huge Jon Snow thing. And he really hyped it up. This was as part of my interview with Martin for the big spread on House of the Dragon. He let it slip that we were discussing a Jon Snow thing. And this is, Hibbard admitted this. He said, he begged me not to mention this publicly, but I felt compelled to. It's not just, oh, he let it slip, but it was in confidence. Martin looked him in the eye and told him, do not talk about that publicly. And he did it anyway. And now look at what Kit is saying of, I really didn't want this leaked out. It was such a nascent idea. It isn't even an idea. It's just a impulse that I thought, a kind of motivation. I wanted to kind of explore if we could do more with that. I didn't have a firm idea that was really good, so I didn't. Why did Hibbard leak this anyway? Because he wanted a scoop. Bigger question is, this is a massive betrayal of trust. Why does Hibbard keep getting interviews with cast and crew on any level with this franchise? I've been angry at him for other things. As Benioff's mouthpiece, he would selectively redact his reports on the Blu-ray commentaries to make them look better. And then when I double-checked, like 2 years after it happened, I managed to get my hands on a Blu-ray, and I realized he cut out in his report the parts where they say, come on, kid, don't you realize we wanted the Sansa rape to happen so we could see Sophie giving a great performance that has nothing to do with the story? Like, that he was leaving things out. And then you see all the other stuff you did, and I've shown this in other stuff, of if you've seen the video of him at the final Comic-Con, that was classic him, where he's clearly doing a rehearsed script. This is not journalism. But all of that aside, even if you ignored all of that prior, baggage that I have with him, and all of that yelling, it's just the head guy who wrote the books, George R. R. Martin himself, pleaded with you not to mention that Kit was tossing around ideas for Jon Snow projects, begged you not to directly, and then you went and did it anyway. How does he keep getting interviews? Well, he doesn't get as many as he used to when he's not at Entertainment Weekly anymore. Entertainment Weekly was getting all the post-episode interviews with cast members. Though he did get a string of interviews with each director. With the directors, and it's not that many, but he got an interview with each of the directors, the 4 directors, and then with Ryan Condal again post-finale. Why would Ryan Condal give this man an interview after he betrayed George R. R. Martin's trust like that on a pretty big project leak? And please talk about this in the comments. The wider context is other interviewers during the late Game of Thrones were just plain afraid to ask about controversial things like the Sansa rape, and then they just stopped talking about it. And that is always in my mind still, oh, you keep harping on that. This is their defining failure. This was the key thing. And throughout 2016, they just give them softball interviews or not at all, or when they do late night talk shows, and then they give happy little stories about working on season 1, which we've already heard 1,000 times. People were afraid to ask them questions because they knew it's access journalism. If we ask them a hard question, they'll never interview with us again. Like, I remember Vanity Fair, actually, I'm surprised they were brave enough to mention in our final interview with them in Season 8, we submitted a list of questions and they wrote them back, and not only that they didn't even give an answer for they said there's this one line where we questioned, well, what are your feelings about the Sansa rape stuff and the controversy of that? Not only did they not answer it, they deleted it from their response line, the question from the response email of, you do not ask that. So after years of living through that cult of silence around any toxic boss celebrity, you've seen this coming up time and again of, we are afraid to ask about a controversial rape thing, or afraid to ask about that Confederate show, which was deeply offensive. So many interviewers are afraid to ask them obvious questions about obvious controversies for fear of never getting an interview again. On the other hand, Hibbard gets to break Martin's trust when he makes him swear in front of him, begging him, do not leak a spin-off idea we have. And he publicly does it anyway, and there are no consequences. That other people would never, if other people asked about a rape controversy, they would never get an interview again. This guy breaks your trust about a major leak, and he continued to get interviews with the showrunner. One is too many. That Ryan Condal still interviewed him again. So, if he's the one who leaked this, only to turn out it really wasn't that big of an idea, it was just we were exploring it, and Martin and Kit Harington have gone at length saying we really did not want to even give word of this. It would lead to empty speculation like it did for the past 2 years, distracting from other projects in the media. He caused specifically what they were trying to avoid, and it turns out it was nothing. I understand that, like, THR will keep using him as their review guy. I can't change that. Why would Martin or any cast and crew members, specifically Ryan Condal and the directors, ever give this man an interview again after such a breach of trust? If nothing else, this is cut and dry of, oh, I leaked this. I mean, I doubt he'd ever be at a panel interview with Martin again live. If there's ever a Q&A, ask, didn't Martin swear to you not to talk about that and he just broke his trust? Because you tried to build this up into something that it wasn't. That Martin didn't hype it up. Kit Harington never tried to hype this up as something. This is all on Hibbard. So those are the two pieces of news, that some ideas they were tossing around, and wow, did they really not want people to even be discussing this. The leak was a massive breach of trust. hopefully we can move on from this, that we're not going to have sequel spin-offs any more than we did to X-Men 3. There is going to be a soft reboot in a decade or two, where they make a faithful adaptation, not unlike how the X-Men movies had the soft reboot like that. It's already begun. In terms of that, this isn't the House of the Dragon, the other stuff, they're not really prequels to the Game of Thrones television series. They're prequels to the A Song of Ice and Fire books. And one day they will have an accurate, faithful adaptation.